Hello and welcome again to Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky. It's a beautiful late July evening here in Chattanooga, and we are ready to move into Revelation chapter 6, where the Lamb began opening the seven seals and reveal what's written on the scroll.
About time.
Well, just about. I'm going to ask Becky to read chapter 6, verse 1 through 4, and then I will read 5 through 8.
I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown. And he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword.
Okay. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Do not harm the oil and wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. There we have encountered the famous or notorious four horsemen of the apocalypse. First four seals that are sealing this scroll. Becky will explain to us the meaning and significance of the four horsemen. Or we both will tackle it. How's that?
There's going to be bad stuff going on. Wars and famine and pestilence. As these beings or angels or horses or whatever they are have been held back until the time of the end, and we're going to get it in the end.
So Becky is suggesting that this all has to do with the end of time.
Yeah.
I'm going to kindly suggest otherwise. We have 3 series of sevens that begin at this point in Revelation. First, the 7 seals are opened, then 7 trumpets are blown, and then 7 bowls are poured out. I'm not the only one that suggests this, but I believe the best interpretation. And we need to note, as in just about everything in this book, there are various interpretations for each part.
Sometimes they are in the same household.
What? You mean you suggesting that my own wife might disagree with something I say?
She might hold another opinion.
Heavens to Murgatroyd! I'm going to suggest what I think is the best way of interpreting these passages. All 3 of them, the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls, cover the same period of time. And each one of them, to get to the 6th of the series of 7, brings us to the final judgment, the end of time. It seems to me that they begin at the time that John is seeing these visions, at the time that he has sent letters to the 7 churches, and continue to the end of history.
So this kind of stuff is going on continually.
Yes. and it looks at them from 3 different perspectives with each of the series of 7. There may even be some intensifying, but the book really has one main theme, and that is God is always in control. He's on the throne. The lamb that was slain is there carrying out his purposes. And there are 2 things that happen throughout history, 2 purposes that God has as we go through history. One is to punish wickedness. And we'll see that the people who are called the earth dwellers, or the followers of the beast, receive judgment, punishment, within history through various natural and human events. The other purpose God has is to redeem his people. We have the earth dwellers who are punished, and the people of God who are redeemed or saved.
But these horrible things happen to believers and unbelievers.
That's true. And in fact, the book talks about conquering or overcoming from the very beginning. And there's a great irony in that. And that is, we conquer or overcome the forces of history that God is working out in the same way that Christ did, the Lamb who was slain. We overcome through, if necessary, giving our lives in faithfulness to Christ. What looks like defeat from the world's perspective is really victory. Go back to the cross. You can almost hear the devil looking on and laughing as he sees the Son of God nailed to the cross. But in 3 days' time, he emerges from the tomb victorious over death and the devil. That's what happens in this book. People in the first century church who are beginning to face persecution and opposition wonder if it's going to be worth it. And John, in a series of visions, sees the outcome. Okay, does this make any sense so far? Let's look a little more carefully at the 4 horsemen. And note first that these horsemen, riding different colored horses, are echoes of Old Testament prophetic books. Do you remember which prophet in the Old Testament talks about 4 horsemen? Or in another vision, horses of different colors pulling 4 chariots?
Oh, chariots. You gotta be Ezekiel. I'm not Ezekiel, Elijah. But that's not a book. Tell me.
Becky is struggling here, bouncing all around it. There are some echoes of Ezekiel in this passage. The main prophet is Zechariah.
Oh.
Zechariah, writing at the time of the Persian period, sees different horses, and some of them pulling chariots, some of them having riders. But we're meant to think about the Old Testament and the different kinds of punishment God threatened to bring on his people and other countries if they were not obedient to him. They included warfare, both against external enemies and civil wars, famine, plagues, sickness, pestilence. All of these going back to the book of Deuteronomy, or as our friend in Tallahassee used to say, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, I think around chapter 28, and you'll have to research this, depending on my rapidly failing memory. God promised the people as they were going into the promised land a blessing if they were faithful to his covenant, and curses or punishments if they were not. So this also echoes the passage in Deuteronomy. First horse, who is white, is a rider who is coming out to conquer. Conquest, we can call him.
Putin. Putin.
Putin, he ain't riding no horse. He would be an example, though. Some people, because the horse is white and because Christ is later riding a white horse in this book, they want to identify this with Christ the Conqueror, but I don't think it fits this passage at all. All four of these are bringing punishment on the earth, and we'll just call this writer Conquest, and that would echo and reverberate in the Roman Empire. Church is not only facing opposition, they're beginning to face more and more opposition from perhaps the greatest empire that the world has ever known, Rome. Try to imagine, if you can, being in a little church in one of these seven cities of Asia, and not only have the Jews rejected you, although you've come out of the Jewish background, Rome is beginning to exercise its might against the church. How could you possibly stand up against that? I'm actually going to show them. And the writer has a bow, not one of the weapons that the Romans used in their army, but off to the east of the Roman Empire were a group of people called the Parthians, descendants of the ancient Persians. They represented the greatest external threat to the empire in the time of this book. They used bows as their main weapon. Okay, what's the color of the second horse?
There's a white horse, and then there's a red.
Bright red. And he has a great sword to take peace from the earth. Let's call him warfare, or it seems maybe even civil warfare. The Roman Empire was shaken by internal rebellion and civil war all throughout the later periods of the first century. In fact, in 1 year during the later first century, there were 4 different emperors, each one of them trying to seize power from the one before. So they took peace from the earth, and people are killing each other. Maybe a civil war. Third horse is a black horse, and the rider has a pair of scales in his hand and is calling out prices for different kinds of foodstuffs weighed in a scale. Did you know that the only time in the first century that you had to weigh out your food in a scale was when there were shortages? Now you do. Famine would often go right along with military conflict and warfare. Means of getting food, and especially getting them to the city, disrupted by this kind of thing. So prices quoted here, a denarius, which is 1 day's pay for a working man, for a quart of wheat, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Barley is not as desirable a grain as wheat. Those prices are as much as 16 times the usual price. There's scarcity, even among things like oil and wine. Oil and wine were considered the basic foodstuffs. So, following along with warfare, there is famine. And the last horse is a pale green.
Sounds like sickness.
Yeah. The Greek word is chloros. Chlorophyll, Clorox, chlorophene is the color of a decomposing corpse. That pleasant pale green for sickness, pestilence. It'd be nearly impossible during times of warfare to stop the spread of disease. Let's say you have thousands of people killed in a battle near a great city. They do to dispose of the corpses. Well, it would take a long time if they were able to do it at all. Meantime, pestilence begins to break forth. Well, this is not a pretty picture of things that are to come. Does that mean God is no longer in control?
It's just the opposite. He's controlling the whole thing,
He is controlling it.
which is even scarier.
Because the four creatures around his throne are calling forth. Well, it could be scarier, or it could be, if you're confident in the kind of God you worship and his control, it's not going to turn out as bad as you think. We'll see that in the next seal. Which people have been killed already for their faith. Becky, please read 9 through 11 when the fifth seal is opened.
When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Then each of them was given a white robe, and they were told to wait a little longer until the full number of their fellow servants, their brothers and sisters, were killed just as they had been.
Okay, people are being killed because of their testimony to Christ, and their souls are found under the altar in heaven. Picture in this vision is that there's a heavenly temple, God dwells, and an altar in heaven for sacrifice. And these souls are under the altar, or in front of the altar. In the earthly altar in the temple, what happened under the altar, right in front of the altar?
Where the blood went.
Blood is poured out from the sacrifices. Beyond my imagining, but imagine the Passover, for example. Tens of thousands of animals were slaughtered. We're told there were great gutters running from the altar down into by brooks where the blood would flow. Some of the blood was taken by the priest and sprinkled under the altar. It represents a sacrifice of these lives, a remembrance of people's sin. Sacrifices in heaven are people of God who are slain because they're faithful to their testimony to Christ, even in the face of death. And notice what they cry out to God. First, they call him Sovereign Lord, means they recognize he's in control. They cry out for vengeance.
How long? How long?
Well, until you avenge our blood. Is that what Jesus cried from the cross? No, he said forgive them. His blood was for a different one. Even the first martyr, Stephen, that we read about in the book of Acts, asked God for forgiveness. But these souls of the slain are not asking for forgiveness, they're asking for vengeance. Does that mean they're not being good Christians in heaven?
Somebody's got to say it.
Is there anything wrong with vengeance? Inherently wrong with vengeance?
It's the justice.
Yes, it's a
Crying
form
for
of justice.
justice.
And the Bible says, God being the speaker, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. I don't want to live in a universe without justice. People's wicked actions have no consequences. And God has provided the consequences for sin. On one hand, he provided the blood of Christ to take away sin. And on the other, he has vengeance or repayment for sin on those who won't repent. So although the people who are killed because they're Christians are wanting vengeance, God says, wait a little while longer. concept that's found in the Old Testament and throughout early Jewish writing is that God has a book. In that book, He has written down not only the names of those who will be saved, the names of all the faithful who will be killed throughout history because of their faith. God says we haven't reached the full number yet. Hang on until the full number of those who are going to be killed is filled up. Express. What are you expressing? Yeah.
Oh, I'm ready to get on with it.
So are they. But God is patient. Long suffering, the Bible calls it. He's not slow concerning His justice, but He's waiting until everybody who can be saved will be saved. Time coming when we'll come to the end of that, and vengeance will be issued to the dwellers on the earth, they're called again. People who follow the beast.
And of His patience.
That's right. His patience run out. So verse 12, we're about to wrap up the seals here. When He opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth, the full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll that's being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, and the great ones, and the generals, and the rich, and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of Him who is seated on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? Once again, Old Testament prophetic language brought into the picture here. Several passages in the Old Testament about the sky being rolled up like a scroll, the sun darkened, the moon turned blood, the stars all falling. In some cases, it's the end of a period of history. For example, the Babylonian Empire, or the Assyrian Empire, or here the Roman Empire. But this sounds like a whole lot more than that to me. This has got to be the end of history, the end of the world. Wait a minute, Bruce. We're only in chapter 6. We got 16 more chapters to go. If this is the end of the world, what's the rest of it going to tell us? We're going to get to the end of the world 2 more times. Growing intensity. By the way, those who want to take this book literally, can all the stars of the sky literally fall on the earth? Thinking of meteorites maybe, but
It wouldn't take one to take us out.
yeah. Everyone, as this is Old Testament imagery too, hiding in the cave and calling on the mountains to fall on them. And then one of the most ironic phrases ever to occur in biblical literature or any other in verse 16, hide us from the wrath of the Lamb.
Yeah.
Does that scare you? We got an angry lamb here. It's definitely ironic. There's only one. Yeah. Only one lamb whose wrath would scare all the great people of the earth. The lamb that was slain, who's also a lion. But I think we read something like that, and we're so used to thinking in terms of the Bible as being solemn that we miss the fact that this is greatly ironic to be afraid of the wrath of the Lamb. And it causes us to think about who that Lamb is. Well, we got to wrap this up for today. Since we get 2 more times to travel through the same period of history, get more details as we go. But next time in chapter 7, we will reveal the mystery of the 144,000. Becky will continue to. That didn't sound very angry. Can you do an angry lamb?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll just have to leave it at that. Enough of our frivolity. I hope you're benefiting from this study, and we'll see you next time. But don't forget, don't
Don't send
send
money.
money. God bless you.